What if one morning you stepped outside and looked up at the sky, only to see something impossible? A glowing arc stretching from one horizon to the other. Not a cloud, not the Milky Way, but a ring, massive, bright, unmistakable. What if Earth had rings like Saturn? We often look at Saturn and admire its beauty, those dazzling rings made of ice and rock, orbiting in harmony. But it's easy to forget that Saturn isn't special for having rings. It's special because its rings are still around. What if Earth had a set of rings just like that? Not for a moment, but permanently. Would we still recognize our sky? Would our world feel the same? And would human history have unfolded the way it did? Let's start with the basics. Saturn's rings are enormous, over 280,000 kilometers wide, but incredibly thin. In some places, just 10 meters thick. They're made up of countless particles, ranging from microscopic dust grains to chunks the size of small buildings, mostly ice, with a touch of rock and metal. If Earth had a similar ring system, it would need to orbit within what's called the Roche limit, the region where tidal forces from Earth prevent the material from clumping into a moon. For Earth, that means our rings would likely sit between 6,000 and 9,500 kilometers above the surface, just beyond low Earth orbit. These rings wouldn't be quite as big as Saturn's, but they'd still be massive. Imagine standing anywhere on Earth and seeing brilliant arcs slicing across the sky. Not just at night, but even in daylight. But what would that actually look like? Well, it depends on where you are. If you're standing on the equator, say in Quito, Nairobi, or Jakarta, you'd see the rings edge on. They'd appear as a thin, bright line stretching across the sky. Sometimes nearly invisible in the day, but glowing faintly at dusk and dawn. It might resemble a strange, permanent Milky Way, but move farther north or south, and things get dramatic. In places like Cairo or Mexico City, the rings would rise above the horizon in grand arches, shimmering and majestic. At even higher latitudes like New York, Berlin, or Tokyo, the view would be breathtaking. Thick arcs dominating the sky, painted with gaps and shadows, even casting visible bands of shade on the landscape below. By the way, if you like this content, remember to subscribe and like. And at night, forget constellations. Forget the moon. The rings would be the centerpiece of the sky, bright enough to outshine the stars. Their reflected sunlight could create permanent twilight in some regions. In fact, nights might never be completely dark in places near the poles because the rings would scatter light like a cosmic lampshade. But this isn't just about beauty. Rings would change how humans understood the world. Throughout history, we've looked to the sky for meaning, to navigate, to tell time, to understand the universe. With rings overhead, our ancestors might have drawn different maps, invented different gods, even built cities aligned to the arcs. Imagine Stonehenge, not aligned to the solstice sun, but to the midwinter shadow of the ring. Imagine Mayan calendars designed around when the rings crossed the sun. Imagine cultures where the rings were seen as bridges to the heavens, or warnings from the gods. Our myths, religions, and languages might be radically different, shaped by a sky that never let us forget we were part of something cosmic. But it's not all romantic. Rings aren't just scenery, they're physical. That means consequences. Rings constantly shed particles. Micrometeoroids and dust could drift down into our atmosphere. That might create more auroras, not just near the poles, but across the tropics. The skies of Ecuador and Kenya might dance with green light every night, but they might also interfere with satellites. Modern GPS, internet satellites, weather monitoring, all of that depends on spacecraft orbiting Earth. Rings would create debris zones, increasing the risk of collisions. Entire orbital paths might become inaccessible. Our whole approach to spaceflight and satellite design would have to evolve, possibly delaying the space age by decades. And here's another twist: shadows. Rings block sunlight. Depending on their tilt and thickness, they could cast vast shadows on the Earth's surface, especially during equinoxes. Some regions might see dramatic dimming every year, not just eclipses, but week-long seasons of darkness. That could affect agriculture, animal behavior, and weather patterns. There's even a chance rings could alter the planet's climate. Though how much is still debated, but let's pull back. Would it even be possible for Earth to have rings? Actually, yes. Some scientists believe that Earth did have a ring, long ago. Around 4.5 billion years ago, a Mars-sized object slammed into the young Earth. The debris from that collision eventually formed the Moon. But in the immediate aftermath, Earth may have had a glowing disk of debris, a proto-ring, before it coalesced into our single, steady companion. So, in a way, our planet was a ringed world. We just didn't get to see it. And perhaps that's for the best. Rings are beautiful, but fleeting. Saturns won't last forever. They're slowly falling into the planet, dissolving into vapor. In 100 million years or so, they may be gone. Earth having permanent rings would be amazing, visually, emotionally, scientifically. But they'd also change everything. How we live, how we explore space, how we imagine the cosmos. So the next time you look up and see our simple sky, stars, moon, maybe a passing satellite, imagine a world where that view is completely different. Not better, not worse, just breathtaking in another way. Thanks for watching.